we live on a planet Earth where you can tell the most about a nation by who they incarcerate. In Turkey, they incarcerate journalists. Thank God we don't do that here, even though they've been called the enemy of the people. In Russia, they incarcerate political opponents. I'm glad we don't do that, even though with chance of lock her up. But you go into the American criminal prisons, sir, and you see the most vulnerable people. You see over-stigmatized mentally ill people clogging our system. You see over-stigmatized addicted people clogging our system. You see a system where, as Brian Stevenson says, it treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And you see disproportionately, overwhelmingly for drug crimes, African Americans and Latinos being incarcerated. The importance of your job, and I'll ask you this last question, because you haven't met with me yet, you've given that courtesy to others. Would you please meet with me in my office so you and I can have a heart-to-heart on the urgency, the cancer on the soul of our country's criminal justice system is the disproportionate impact of that system on those vulnerable communities, including women, over 80% of whom the women we incarcerate are survivors of sexual trauma. Can you and I sit down and have a longer conversation than these 10 minutes will allow on this issue?
I'd very much welcome that, Senator. You know, my experience back in 1992, when sort of blood was running on the streets all over the United States, my ideas were actually first formed when I went to Trenton. And the African-American community there essentially surrounded me and was saying, look, we're in our golden years. We're trying to enjoy our golden years, and we can't even go outside our house. We have bars on our house and so forth. Please, these gangs are running roughshod. So I developed this idea called weed and seed. And my attitude was, look, let's stop arguing past each other on let's attack root causes and let's get tough on crime. And I felt that for programs to work, like after-school programs and so forth, for all this, you know, for housing projects to be safe, we needed strong enforcement in those communities, and we needed those other programs to be brought to bear community by community. And it had to be done with the leadership of the community, and that was this idea of the partnership. And it caught on. It was very popular, and in fact, it was continued by a lot of the U.S. attorneys in the Clinton administration after the Bush administration was out. And it actually, under a number of different names, has continued. So I'm very conscious of the issues you raise, but my goal is to provide and my motivation was to provide safety in these neighborhoods for the people trying to raise their children and for the older people and so forth. And I think the neighborhoods are, you know, the crime rate has gone down. I make a distinction between the way we treat these chronic violent offenders and the drug penalties. The drug penalties, as I said, very high and draconian, and in some cases that might have been necessary, but I supported revisiting the penalty structure.